Hello again. I know that I've touched upon this subject before, but one or two things lately have made me think that it is worth revisiting. The thumbnail to this video shows a scene in Trafalgar Square in early 1963. It was a bitterly cold winter, for those that remember it. It began snowing on Boxing Day, and there were snow drifts, even in London, 6 or 10 feet high. The snow didn't thaw until Easter the following year. There was a lot of tobogganing and not a few snowball fights as well, as you can imagine. One took place between some children in Trafalgar Square, and a reporter who was photographing the frozen fountains there saw what happened next. One of the snowballs thrown had hit a policeman on duty, and he and his colleague at once set to join in the fun, engaging in a snowball fight with the children. Just look at those young bobbies. They're as cheerful, fresh-faced young men as you could hope to see. Exactly the kind of youngster who would be happy to hold up the traffic so that a mother with a pram or a group of children could cross the road safely. That actually used to happen in the 1950s and 60s, by the way. A policeman would see a child wanting to cross the road, and he would march out into the road, stop the traffic with a raised hand, and then wave the kids across. I simply can't imagine that happening today. Have a look at the photograph in the thumbnail to this video and just feast your eyes for a moment upon the example of two proper British bobbies. Like most people, I sometimes complain that one never sees a bobby on the beat these days. But last week I met my daughter in central London and we went for a walk around Regent's Park and then up the canal to Camden. In the course of that time we saw no fewer than 5 police officers on foot. Even odder was at least people were patrolling in 2s and 3s. That is to say, we saw a pair of police officers and then we saw 3 together on foot. Can you imagine? I mean, how often do you actually come across police officers on foot these days? There was hardly anybody about, so they were unlikely to come across any bank robbers, muggers or terrorists or anybody that would pose a threat to them. They were perfectly safe. The pair in Regent's Park did find a couple of people breaking the law, or so they thought. It was a young couple sitting on a park bench together, chatting quietly and minding their own business. If you can believe it, the 2 police officers went over and spoke very seriously to them. We could see they were looking quite serious, as though they'd caught somebody out doing something illegal. It turned out they were establishing that the couple lived in the same house and were therefore not committing an offence by sitting next to each other in the park. I remarked the last time that I broached this subject that the police officers one sees these days in Britain are both exceedingly scruffy and also vaguely menacing in appearance. Perhaps it's all the batons, tasers and cans of tear gas that they have hanging from their belts, or possibly it's the fact that they seem to be wearing flak jackets like soldiers now. These are men I'm wary of, in the way that I used to be wary of the police in places like Moscow or Damascus. I cross the road rather than walk past them, for I know they're bad news. Looking now again at the thumbnail of this video, which shows 2 cheerful young bobbies who have just had a snowball chucked at them, can you imagine for a moment how the police in London these days would react if they were struck by a snowball? They'd probably taser the person and then radio for urgent assistance. Seriously, the breed that we see about these days are quite different from what we once knew. These are not bobbies at all. They're sullen-looking types out for trouble, and I have the distinct impression they would probably issue a boy with a fixed penalty notice or something if they saw him chucking snowballs about. I don't think this is just me behaving like an old man. I've had dealings with the police in various countries and always found the British police the best of the bunch by a mile, but not anymore. They strike me these days as being a pretty undesirable and dubious bunch.